Hello and welcome back to my 10 favorite people. Hope you're doing well. You absolutely love to see it. This is exactly why we're always prepared for multiple outcomes on this channel. After months of pain, holding a large portion of the portfolio in Ethereum and watching it underperform things like Solana and even larger, safer assets like Bitcoin. Out of nowhere, we see the SEC pull a complete 180 on its spot Ethereum ETF stance, resulting in the largest green weekly candle for Ethereum since May of 2021, and it occurs on the exact week of the ETF approval deadline. Now, the timing of this flip by the SEC is definitely not a coincidence. In my last video, we discussed how the US Senate overturned the SEC's anti-crypto regulation, and it was the first time that I remember ever seeing bipartisan support for pro-crypto regulation from the US Senate. And I think that just put pressure on the SEC to make this happen because crypto has become a very important subject for voters, and they realized that it was likely not going to be very politically popular to deny this Ethereum ETF. Not to mention you have issuers like BlackRock and Fidelity filing for it and backing it, which makes it very hard for the SEC to argue against it. And we even have one of the presidential candidates coming out and accepting Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies as donations for the upcoming presidential election. So the SEC has a lot of pressure to be slightly more lenient with crypto and not continue with this hard stance they've had over the past few years or so, which is incredibly bullish for the space in the medium to long term. And it's very clear that the market is quite underexposed to Ethereum. We can go ahead and remove this deadline marker now. You can see the Ethereum weekly candle is quite strong, but on Bitcoin, you have this wick to the upside. Same thing for Solana. So we're probably seeing some rotation into Ethereum because it's likely underallocated right now. But again, very bullish in the long term and definitely adds a little more credence to the left translated cycle theory if we can see some serious institutional demand coming into these Ethereum spot ETFs. But of course, if we don't see that much demand for the Ethereum ETFs, we probably continue to follow the normal cycle playbook. And of course, we're not going to know that until we see inflows those first few days. As for macro, things look pretty okay in the short term. Still not expecting any rate cuts until September 2024. Yes, inflation is still stubborn, so rates likely have to stay higher for longer. All eyes will be on the next inflation print and the next unemployment rate print, but the unemployment rate is still below 4%, which means the markets don't have to panic quite yet because we do know monetary policy and Fed interest rates have a huge impact on Bitcoin and risk assets as a whole. And we normally see very large crashes happen when something breaks in the economy and the Fed is forced to start cutting rates. But as of right now, it looks like things are still chugging along and we're still seeing quite a bit of strength for the S&P 500, a nice close above the previous all-time high last week, continuation so far this week, and no real concerns as of right now unless we get a weekly close back below that previous all-time high at 5250, and it likely will drag Bitcoin down with it if that happens. But as of right now, we know they're correlated. The S&P 500 bottomed first, Bitcoin bottomed about 2 weeks later and caught back up to it very quickly, of course with Bitcoin having more volatility. But as of right now, things look okay in the short term, but I do think a lot of Bitcoin's direction will depend on how this Ethereum spot ETF approval and launch goes. Now we know Ethereum has quite a large market cap, so a 25% rally by Ethereum is going to put quite a bit of downward pressure on Bitcoin dominance. And we're still holding above 54% for now, but a clean break below 54% alongside a bullish Ethereum could mean that alt season is on the horizon, but it's too early to call that quite yet. But definitely a big rejection once again at 56% for Bitcoin dominance. of course, catalyzed by the huge upside move for Ethereum. And of course, as always, no changes to the portfolio. Patience has really been working out well this year. Sometimes Bitcoin takes the spotlight because it's getting the inflows. Sometimes Solana takes the spotlight because there's a lot of demand for meme coin speculation. And now we have Ethereum taking the reins and taking the spotlight once again with these ETF rumors and the likely ETF approval this week. So still quite happy with these allocations for now. And even though it's very tempting to throw in the remainder of the cash because maybe this Ethereum ETF is a huge success and sends us significantly higher, but I would rather manage my risk and keep that cash available for opportunities, or just have it in case there's a black swan or something and I decide I want to add to positions. The 80% of my portfolio that's already allocated is plenty to benefit from any short-term rally or left translated cycle scenario that might end up playing out. Zooming out a little bit, we do have Bitcoin starting to peak into the overvalued region, in my opinion. Now, overvalued doesn't mean sell everything here because we have to go lower. It means I'm not interested in even considering buying any Bitcoin above 70,000 for this cycle. If it doubles from here, amazing. I will enjoy that rally with my existing position, but I am not interested in adding any Bitcoin exposure above 70K, and anything in the high 80s or 90s is where I would consider taking some profits. And if we do somehow revisit the undervalued region or maybe the low fair value region, I'll consider adding some Bitcoin exposure. But as of right now, very happy to sit on the existing position as we sit between the fair value and overvalued region. As for how low we could still go this year, I do still think the low 50,000s is still on the table. I don't think this Ethereum headline and this likely ETF approval changes absolutely everything. There's definitely still macro risks out there, and we still don't know what demand for the Ethereum ETF is going to be like. I think Bitcoin was a little more straightforward and easy for institutions to allocate to. Maybe some of those same institutions will allocate to Ethereum as well, but we're going to have to see what that comparative demand is. And I think there could be a lot of pain if everybody piles into Ethereum here while Grayscale gets those unlocks, if we don't see the same inflows we saw for the Bitcoin ETF. And maybe that could be a catalyst to see lower prices, but not betting that we see those as of right now. But if we do see them, would consider adding some cash at those levels if we are given that gift between now and the end of the year. But as always, when in doubt, zoom out. I do think Bitcoin and this space as a whole does very well on longer time frames if you can be patient enough to hold through the volatility. I don't think currency devaluation is going anywhere, so Bitcoin's price likely slowly goes higher in the longer term. But of course, let me know what you expect for Ethereum. Will the ETF get approved? It looks incredibly likely. I think the SEC has already reached out to some of the large exchanges like NASDAQ. They've already reached out to a lot of the issuers like BlackRock and Fidelity. So I think it's almost a 90% chance at this point that this gets approved. But in my opinion, the real question is, what will the demand for the Ethereum ETF be like? And will it send us into this crazy left translated cycle rally? Or will we see underwhelming inflows that can't keep up with the grayscale outflows and lead us to see more of a normal cycle where we have a boring summer and rally later in the year, kind of like what we see when we look at seasonality for the S&P 500 in election years. But of course, let me know what you expect. There's definitely some opportunity to be had if we do really see some institutional demand for Ethereum. But as always, thank you so much for the support on the recent videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.